Good morning, I'm Bill, and I appreciate you checking out my channel. I want to update you kind of where things are right now and what's going on with my life. I bought this Tesla Model Y. It's a 2022 Tesla Model Y. I traded in a really nice 2014 Chevy Silverado High Country. Now, if you know anything about trucks, the High Country Chevy is their top of the line trim. Now, I only had a half ton. I didn't have a 3/4 ton or a ton truck. It was just the entry level half ton pickup. It was a crew cab with a really short bed, which I hated, 5'8" bed on the back. It was almost like putting the bed on the back of the truck was an afterthought. They really meant to design a car. But they thought, oh, well, let's make it a truck, so stick this little tiny bed on the back. But it was a great truck, only had 94,000 miles on it. And I started getting inquiries from a local Chevrolet dealership saying, we know you have this truck and we know you've taken good care of it because you bring it in for service all the time, and we'd like to buy it back from you. We'd like to make you an offer. So I went to the dealership. They made me a lowball offer, which I expected. And I told them I was very disappointed and offended that they would beg me to bring my truck in and then give me a lowball offer. And, they apologized. I said, well, this is kind of how we play the game. We always come in and sneak in a little bit low. So, well, what do you want? I said, I've already told you what I want for the truck, and I'm not kidding you. That's my number. If you can't meet the number, just tell me. I'm out of here, and I'll go somewhere else, or I'll just keep the truck. It doesn't matter to me. Well, they wanted the truck real bad, so they paid me my price. The next day, after they had detailed it and everything, they jacked it up $10,000. So they were hoping to make 10 grand on my truck. Well, I asked them, I said, do you have any Teslas in stock? I'm in the market for a used low mileage Tesla, and it's got to be a Model Y because I have a hard time getting in those lower cars. This one sits up a little bit higher. The head clearance up here, right above the top of the door jamb, the head clearance in this car is much better than those low slung models. And so they had one. They said, yeah, we got one out of 5 or 6 or 7 dealerships in a 2-state area. They had one. They just took it that morning on trade at the BMW dealership, which they also owned. And so I said, well, go get it. And they took a guy over there, picked it up, brought it back to me, and I looked at it and I said, wow, this is a gorgeous car. Well, it hasn't even been cleaned up. I said, no, that's okay. It's nice to see that this car is pretty decent and pretty clean. It's nice to see how the previous owner took care of it. If this is the way he drove it, it's in great condition. And I know, yeah, you could tidy it up a little bit, but it really looks pretty good. And so we came to an agreement, and I traded my truck for the Tesla. And that way I didn't have to pay sales tax on whatever amount they gave me for my truck as a down payment against the car. So I've got a super low monthly payment compared to what I would if I just bought the car outright. I would have had a much higher payment. So I'm really happy with the car. I just got back from a 2,000 mile trip. I left Pensacola. I drove west into Alabama, crossed over into Mississippi, went north to near Memphis, Tennessee. I had a good friend there that I haven't seen in 15 years or so, and I called him on the phone. It was at night. I knew it wasn't a good time to go by and see him because I was kind of pushing and I was trying to get somewhere to a specific place. And so we talked for an hour as I'm driving through the greater Memphis area. I continued driving that. I left it. Now listen, you're not going to believe this. I did not get away from my house until, I don't know, it was after lunch. And I drove all night. It was about a 12-hour drive to get to where I was going. However, it took me probably 14 hours total because I had to stop and charge my car, just like people have to stop and put gas in their tank. It's not inconvenient. It's about every 200 miles I would try to stop. It was a good time to stretch my legs because my old knees just don't work like they used to. And I decided, okay, well, when I stop to charge my car, it usually takes between 20 and 25 minutes to charge the car. That would give me time to go into a convenience store or a fast food place or even a restaurant and order food and then take it with me and then eat in the car. Once I charge it, I back the car out, park it in a regular spot instead of in the charging stall, and eat my food. And then I would get out and walk around the parking lot a little bit, stretch my legs more, throw my trash that I would have collected from whatever fast food or restaurant I got their food from. I'd always have a bag full of trash. I'd go find a receptacle and put that trash in a bin, and then I would make sure my car is nice and tidy, and I would carry on. And 15, 20, 25 minutes is a great time to get all that done, and then I'd be on my way. So it took me about 14, 15 hours to get all the way to Springfield, Missouri. So I went through Alabama, Mississippi, all the way north, crossed over into the corner of Tennessee, and then I went straight west through Little Rock, and then all the way almost to Texas, near Fort Smith, Arkansas. And the reason I had to go all that way is because the route they were going to send me up to Conway, Arkansas. I would have been turning off the interstate before I got to Little Rock. I would angle up straight up to Springfield, but the problem I realized after I got on the road, when I looked at all the non-Tesla charging stations en route to Springfield, I didn't have enough range to get to Springfield. Almost. I mean, we're talking less than 50 miles. If I'd had a little bit more mileage, or if this had been a new Tesla, I probably could have made it. But when I started looking at the available charging stations and realized that the adapter that I needed to hook my charging adapter into the adapter that would fit that charging station that's non-Tesla, I realized I didn't have it. I had the other one. There are only two you have to have. A J1772 adapter, and then you have to have a CCS1 adapter. And I didn't have that one. All of the charging stations along my route going to Springfield would have required the CCS1. I just didn't have it. And so that was my car making that noise. It raises the steering wheel, compresses the steering wheel into the dash, and then pulls my seat all the way back so that it makes it easy for my knees and everything to get out, to exit the vehicle. So that's what that sound was you may have picked up. So anyway, I had to go a different route so that I could stay on the Tesla network, and it would take me all the way to Springfield. So I had to go all the way, almost to Fort Smith, go north into a little town called Alma, Arkansas. I got a charge there, and it sent me up to Rogers, Arkansas. I topped off just a little bit on Rogers, and then I had enough juice to get me to Springfield, Missouri. So that's what I did. And it worked out fine. And while I was there at my friend's house, I ordered that adapter I needed so that I would always have it now. No matter where I go and where I'm at, I can charge my Tesla, whether I've got a Tesla adapter available or a non-Tesla adapter. There are a bunch of networks out there. EVgo is one. Electrify America is another one. Here in Florida, where I live, there is Florida Power and Light has a network of a network of chargers, usually in the center of a small town, and you can just pull into that, just like you do a Tesla charger, snap on the adapter you needed, and then go on your way. So I made it up there to Springfield. I stayed 3 or 4 days with him. We did some sightseeing. We took my car and I let him drive it, and he enjoyed that. And so we drove all up in the Branson, not the Branson. We drove all the way into the Ozark Mountains and enjoyed some of that scenery. And he showed me some neat places, some overlooks, and took some pictures of that. So we had a good time visiting, catching up. I then went south into the Branson area, and I have a friend there that I've known him and his wife since 1981, and hadn't seen them in a long time. Visited with them for probably 3 days, and then I went from there. Now I've reached sort of the pinnacle of where I want to go north, and so now I start back heading south. But I had some ideas. I thought, I'm going to go on my Boondockers Welcome, also owned by Harvest Hosts. And I went to their website and I looked at various places that were in my route that I wanted to go to get me back toward Pensacola. And I found a location in Harrison, Arkansas. And I forget the name of the host site, but really had a good time there. I stayed. I was going to spend 2 nights, and they said, "Yeah, you can stay an extra night." And then I got thinking about it. So I don't know, maybe I should move on further south. So I was with them overnight. I didn't leave their house about 6 p.m. And I wanted to go to Jonesboro, Arkansas, because there was a Tesla charger there. And I decided I would spend the night there. And I decided I needed a shower. And I try to shower about every 3 days when I'm traveling like this. I didn't mention this, but I've got in the back of my car, you can let these rear seats down, and you've got a nice flat, sort of an SUV style floor. Even though the car doesn't sit up like a big SUV, but it's still inside the car, a lot of headroom. I'll do a video sometime soon where I kind of go over the features of the car and what it looks like inside and out. So I got to Jonesboro, and I thought, I should just get a cheap hotel. So I did. I got a cheap hotel. And of course, with a cheap hotel, you get cheap everything. Cheap towels, you get cheap carpet, you get walls that have been painted over about 15 times, and spots of different color where they didn't do a very good job. You just slap some paint on there. And so I stayed the night in Jonesboro, took a shower, and the shower was nice. And only gave me 1 towel. Can you believe that? I didn't think to ask for additional towels, but I had to make do. I had some towels of my own. I ended up using them actually. And then I made my way down to the Memphis area. It was only about an hour and a half away. And I got to, as I was coming into Memphis, I thought, I should call my buddy again. We had talked on the way through Memphis coming up, but I called him again. I said, "Hey, would you like to get together? We haven't seen each other in a long time. Why don't we get together and have breakfast, lunch, coffee, just anything?" He said, "No, just come by the house." He said, "We're home." So once I made my way through Memphis, which didn't take but 15, 20 minutes, I went just into the border of North Mississippi, a little town called South Haven. It used to be called Horn Lake, and they've incorporated that into the South Haven market. And so I stopped and visited with them. I spent, I just spent the 1 night with them, and we got to catch up. We talked and talked and talked, and it was good. So stayed with them. I had already booked a reservation in South Mississippi with a retired couple that have a 100-acre farm. and they were looking forward to me coming. I had to call them and say, you know, I've ended up talking far longer with my friend here in South Haven than I expected, and there's no way I can make it to y'all's house before dark, and I don't like to come in at dark and then try to, you know, set everything up, get the bed ready, and I've got a bunch of stuff. I carried way too much stuff with me, and I needed to offload that, so I've got a pop-up little shower tent, and I put that up, and I can put my stuff inside of it. And so I went to their house the next day. So after getting up and saying my goodbyes, I traveled down to South Mississippi near Liberty. And I stayed with these other friends that I've become acquainted with through the Boondockers Welcome Network. So that's a little bit of an update on where I'm at. Here's my plan. I am going to use this sort of shakedown cruise I've just had, and I'm going to use that to help me plan my next big trip. I've got a really big trip coming, 1st of November roughly. I may leave a little earlier, I may leave a little bit later, but I plan to spend the winter in either New Mexico or Arizona. It's been a dream of mine for about 5 or 6 years to go to Quartzsite, which is the big gathering place for a lot of people around the U.S. and Canada. They come into Quartzsite but they estimate about 1 million people flood into the little town and the surrounding hundreds of thousands of acres of public land called the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. And so people come into this little area, and this is a town of 2,400 people. You know, they have over 50 RV parks in that little town just for that seasonal surge. And so most people actually go out and camp in the desert because it's free. You don't have to pay anything. And so that's what I'm planning to do. I think I'm going to camp in the desert with some friends that I know through YouTube. And I'll be leaving here around the 1st of November. It'll probably take me 2 weeks to get there because I don't like to go far in a day. I figure, you know, 200 miles, 250 miles is about my limit. Because that way I can make my way from one charger to another charger, top my battery off, spend the night in a parking lot, a rest stop, a church parking lot, a Walmart, or whatever. And about every 3 days, I'll either camp in near a truck stop where I can go in and shower, or I'll actually pay for a small, you know, a campground so that I can top up my car, because at the campground, you know, you've got 40 amp and 30 amp and 50 amp electrical service. And that will let me charge up my car at the campsite if I'm allowed to sleep in my car there. And they'll have bathrooms, and they'll have facilities for disabled people, which I am. And they'll also have showers. And so I can do everything at once with that one stop, and then make my way across the country to Quartzsite, Arizona. Now, I've got a sister in Albuquerque. I'm going to stop and visit with her maybe a week and see where she lives. Never been there. And then at the proper time, I'll move on toward Quartzsite. I might even spend some time in some places, BLM land, en route to Quartzsite from Albuquerque, and just enjoy the various places and elevations and scenery and so forth en route to those places. Now, I do not like tourist traps, so I don't think I'll be going to the Grand Canyon, places like that, because I don't know, unless the tourist season really drops off during this time of year we're talking about, I don't like the crowds. I'm kind of a hermit. I want to be pretty much alone, but I'd like to be with people, other people in terms of friends to camp with, who also like to be left alone. But yet we could still get together once a week for a shared meal or something like that. So I know this video is getting really long, but I just want to finish up and say that I plan to spend the winter in Quartzsite, Arizona, or thereabouts. I'm going to also be looking for a home base. And if I could find a home base, I might even go ahead and reserve that so that when I come back out there, I'll have a place to come and it'll be my home. And then when I do come back, it'll probably be, between February 1st and March 1st. And I'll come back to Pensacola. I've talked to my ex. We currently share a house. I have an efficiency apartment off the back of the house. It's a private room that is almost soundproof, and so she can be in the next room watching TV. I don't hear that, and I can be listening to my music, and she doesn't hear that either. But we're going to sell the house come spring. We've developed a lot of equity in the home through the huge increase in housing over the last few years, and the house has tripled in value since we bought it. So we're going to take the money and split it equally, and it's going to require some garage sales and maybe a little sprucing up here and there, and get it ready to sell, put it on the market. I don't think it'll take long to sell. And then once we get it sold, we'll divide the money. I'll then go wherever I've decided to land, and I'm probably going to buy a small RV site. I don't know. In some ways, I hesitate to buy a piece of land because that means when you get ready to go, you have to sell it. And I don't know that I want to go through that. I may just rent an RV site. And I don't want to be near the beach or be near a tourist location. So I don't want to spend a lot of money, extra money, for property because of the jacked up prices that people I don't know, as Americans, we want to gouge everybody and take advantage of everybody just because of COVID, or blame it on pipeline issues or whatever. Prices everywhere are through the roof, and it's just sickening to watch the greed of my fellow Americans who are just trying to make a buck off one another as greedily as they can. So wherever I land, it's going to be in a small town with not a lot of amenities, and I'm not looking to be in some gorgeous RV resort, paying $1,000 a month or more. I just want to have a nice quiet place where I can relax, enjoy my hobbies, my music, and it'd be wonderful if I could find a farmer who has enough land that I could park my camper there and have a small shed to store stuff, and then I could still travel in my car. That would be ideal. I'd love to be close enough to home. It'd be nice to be able to come back and forth, during holidays and stuff, to be with the kids and grandkids. We'll have to see. And so I'm just going to call it right here. I appreciate your hanging with me this long. And I'm happy to be back online, and I hope that you enjoy watching the future videos that I'll be sharing with you about my travels. And I'm going to say right here, bye for now.